This is American Ground Radio. I'm Stephen Parr with Louis R. Avallone.
I mean, a cardboard cutout of Kamala Harris has made it to the southern border before she has.
That's true.
I mean, she has failed to visit the border. And this is what?
That's technically true. The Congresswoman, what was it? Lauren
Boebert.
Yeah, Lauren Boebert.
No, she's failed. Not Lauren Boebert.
No.
She visited the border. She's not vice president. She's a United States Congress lady.
She took a cardboard cutout of the vice president down to the border just so that something that looks somewhat like Kamala Harris would have made it down there.
But she has failed time and time again. Kamala Harris has failed to visit the border more than what? This is like 70 days after Joe Biden designated her as the border czar,
right,
to confront the nation's immigration crises. That she said that, or Biden said, she doesn't need to check with me.
No.
She has my trust.
She speaks for me.
But, I think Lauren Boebert, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, got it right. She said, you just can't hear about what's happening.
No.
You have to come down here. You have to see for yourself to really understand the devastating reality that's at the southern border.
And look, that's the case with any crisis. It is very, very hard to manage a crisis if you don't actually know what the crisis is. You can't solve a problem when you misdiagnose the problem, right?
You know who learned that lesson the hard way? George W. Bush. Because he's even admitted that it was a huge mistake for him to fly over New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, because
instead of landing,
instead of putting his boots, his Texas boots
into
on
the water,
ground,
into the water,
he was just looking out the scenic window of Air Force One at all of the devastation in New Orleans,
right.
And it made him seem like he was just so detached from the disaster on the ground,
looking at it from 30,000 feet rather than having his feet in the floodwaters.
Right. It made him look like he was uncaring. And so my question is, doesn't Kamala look uncaring? Doesn't she care about sex offenders? Doesn't she care about illegal aliens crossing the border? Doesn't she care about drug trafficking and gun smuggling, human smuggling? Because that's what's going on at the border right now.
She does not care about illegal aliens crossing the border. I think she's actually in favor of that. Now, I think she thinks politically she can't say she's in favor of it, but she certainly isn't going to come out necessarily against it.
Well, she visited Guatemala, and then she left Guatemala. She went to Mexico.
So she technically did fly over the border, the same as George W. did at New Orleans. She just didn't look out the window. At least he bothered to look out the window.
Well, maybe there wasn't a White House photographer who captured the image as she looked so intently out of Air Force Two.
I am sure that she has plenty of White House photographers.
All right, so nevertheless, she was appointed border czar back in March. She goes down to Guatemala. She travels to Mexico today.
Did she solve the root causes of immigration? Did she solve that?
You mean climate change?
Yeah. Did she solve that?
No,
with her
not at
jet? With her airplane? No? Oh.
But I want you to listen to this interview. She sat down with NBC's Today host, Lester Holt. And you take a listen.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I mentioned it because I know Republicans have certainly come at you on this, but Democratic Congressman Cuellar has a border district, has said to you and the president, come. You need to see this.
Listen, I care about what's happening at the border.
I care about what's happening at the border.
I think we need to clarify what we're talking about.
I care about that, too.
I think she has been to the border. I think she's been to Taco Bell several times.
Taco Bell, 59 cents gets you anything on our value menu.
See, she did make a run for the border. She's made a run for the border several times in her lifetime. I think that's what they were talking about there.
I don't think that counts. The value menu's long gone.
Listen to her when she says, we've been to the border.
We've been there and done that, got the T-shirt, okay?
Okay, I've been to the Smithsonian.
Uh-huh.
I've been to Italy.
And
what does that tell you?
What in the world did she say? I haven't been to Europe either. Is Europe having a problem with Americans invading Europe?
It's like you ask a doctor, did you see the patient?
Yeah.
Well, the doctor says,
I saw him
I've seen
before he got
patients.
sick.
Yeah, I've seen patients.
Yeah.
But you haven't seen this patient. I don't understand your question.
I haven't seen dogs and cats either. What's your point?
I mean, it's like Bill Clinton. She literally is pulling a Bill Clinton when he said, well, it depends on what your definition of is. You know, Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Hillary hates that.
Kimberly Guilfoyle, the paramour of Don Jr.
Wow. Okay.
She says that Kamala Harris is secretly running Biden's presidency.
Kamala Harris is really the de facto commander-in-chief. She's made it very clear. Remember when he tried to say that she was in charge of the border, and she's like, oh, I'm not in charge of the border. So she's calling the shots here. I know this. I know her a long time. I think she's well in line to run for president next time. And this is just really just a placeholder. But it's sad because the American people deserve so much more.
She is the de facto president. I mean, literally.
Is she? Because if she was the de facto president, would she have put herself in charge of the border without really wanting to solve the issue of the border? See, that's the thing. She has been put in charge of something that she doesn't want to solve. If she's the one running the White House, why would she hand herself a golden screw?
Look, Stephen, nobody said this setup was perfect. I'm just saying she is the de facto president. You know, there was one other time in U.S. history when a president was incapable of serving. Mm-hmm. His name was Woodrow Wilson. He had a stroke, a very debilitating one, and he never recovered. So for about 18 months, the nation was without a president.
But see, that news didn't leak out. People didn't really know that was what was going on. But his wife was the de facto president while he was incapacitated with his stroke. And the American people didn't really know that.
I'm just saying President Biden, I believe, is functionally incapable of discharging his duties.
I agree with that.
But that's why Kamala is trotted out
I think it's
the czar of whatever the crisis du jour is in this country.
But see, I still don't think Kamala's the one who's actually in charge. I think it's the abundance of staffers in the White House who have decided that the inmates are now going to run the asylum. I think they're the ones who have usurped.
Stephen,
you remember when Reagan was shot?
No.
Remember when Reagan was shot, right? And Haig stood up and said, I am in charge now.
I understand.
I think you've got a whole bunch of people in the White House who have now jumped up and said, I'm in charge.
If there's anything we know about leadership, is something like this, something as radical that is occurring in Washington, D.C. and all across our country, it does not happen by happenstance.
No, but you've got all these people on the same, they're all misinformed.
I think it's
they're
Obama.
All looking at the world,
I think it's Obama. I think Obama is passing the torch, not to Biden. He's passing the torch to Kamala Harris.
That could be the case, but I don't think she's grabbed a hold of it yet.
Well, and the American people don't have faith in her. Do you know 41% of likely U.S. voters say that she is not at all qualified to take over the responsibilities of the presidency?
At least they got that right. Let's get to the top 3 things you need to know before tomorrow. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee released a report on what happened at the Capitol on January 6th today. The report found numerous intelligence failures and failures to coordinate between law enforcement agencies and the military. Many officers on the front lines of the Capitol riot suffered broken bones, chemical burns, and other injuries, as no Capitol Police leaders were on the radio communication system during the riot. The bipartisan report recommends giving the Capitol Police more authority to plan for events around the Capitol and to streamline communications with other agencies.
You know, I think this is exactly right. The reason that Capitol Police were not on the radio because they were excluded. Remember, the chief of Capitol Police said he begged for military forces to be present on January the 6th.
And they didn't like the optics. Second thing you need to know before tomorrow, hundreds of criminals were arrested nearly simultaneously across 16 countries in a joint sting operation between the FBI, Europol, and the Australian Federal Police. The combined law enforcement operation was called Operation Ironside, consisted of the FBI and other agencies giving cell phones to mafia and criminal gang members loaded with encrypted messaging apps on them. Law enforcement agencies were then able to track communications between the criminals around the world. 12,000 encrypted phones were used in the operation.
Wait a minute. Are we going to start enforcing the laws?
Only in other countries. And the third thing you need to know before tomorrow, college athletes in Louisiana may soon be able to make money. The Louisiana legislature passed a bill this week to allow athletes to earn rights from their names and images and sponsorship deals. It passed the state Senate unanimously. Governor Edwards hasn't said whether or not he will sign the bill into law. If he does, Louisiana will join a growing list doing the exact same thing, including Alabama, California, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, New Mexico, Tennessee, and Texas.
You know, I know it's not fair for universities to make millions off of their athletes.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm a little concerned that we're taking the focus off of the whole point of college in the first place.
Which is getting an education. Yeah, you're probably right.